So have y'all hit the existential crisis point yet? Yes? No? Gotcha. Okay. Well, I hit my existential crisis about 2 weeks ago. I was sitting in my English class and we were reading The Great Gatsby, which, if you remember, is about an absurdly rich man chasing after the love of his life, who also happens to be a married woman, but come on, that's not important. What's important is this. The main character was relentless. He reinvented himself from nothing into everything. And if his hard work, ambition, and discipline were enough, if the equation really was hard work constitutes success, then Gatsby should have achieved his goals. But he didn't. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What are we missing when we talk about success? Gatsby believed that success was something that could be earned through sheer effort, by wanting it badly enough and refusing to stop chasing it. And that belief isn't fictional. I mean, we live in a world that teaches the same lesson, that if you work harder, then whatever you want, whether it be money or status, success would eventually follow that. I see that belief play out in my everyday life. As a kid of 2 immigrant parents, I've grown up watching people who have flown across the world and worked relentlessly. Not for comfort, but for survival. And the results are real. A 2019 study from the New American Research Fund found that 45% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by the children of immigrants. So this poses the question, how exactly did they do this? Well, surely it's their hard work. They put in the work and success came following, right? Well, not entirely. It's true, there is a monumental amount of effort involved in success, but hard work alone doesn't tell the whole story. Because it shows how far someone can go, but not why some people break through while others stall, even when they're just as capable. And that missing piece is a factor that most people forget to address and happens to be the topic of my speech today. Luck. Now, what's the common thing to think of when you hear the word luck? Going to Las Vegas, hitting a jackpot on a slot machine, or winning the lottery. But fortunately, luck isn't something that's mystical, it isn't chance, and it definitely isn't lazy. Tonight, I want to challenge the belief that hard work alone is the determinant of success. Effort matters deeply, but it isn't the only thing that constitutes achievement. It also lies on recognizing opportunity and acting even in the moments when the pressure is the highest. So, what are we taught initially as students that limits us? Well, we're taught from a very young age to learn in a specific way, through a method called information synthesis. In its essence, we study, we memorize, and we repeat. And to be clear, this works. It solves a system that we, as formerly young students, were presented with, where we had time to spend without care. But suddenly, parents, I'm sure you noticed this, but when we hit high school, we're forced with a huge boatload of different things that we have to focus on, whether it be leadership roles, career development, or extracurriculars. But the important thing to recognize is school doesn't adapt to the change. So how do students adapt to such difficulties? Let's imagine that through an example. Let's say we have student A and student B, both studying for a test. Student A consumes pure informational content for 8 hours a week, whereas student B only studies for 4. But what student B also does is he learns how to take a test. Now, in a traditional testing environment, student A will probably beat student B 98% of the time, solely due to the amount of information that they're able to consume. But student B has learned something different. They've learned how to operate inside of a system, and that will place them at a significant advantage in situations where they don't know what to do. In my fairly limited professional experience, I've noticed that the professional world also values learning curves similar to student B. You won't always be in situations where you know what to do. What is valued however, is how quickly you can take information and apply it to the system that you are given. Without an understanding of the system you operate in, crucial moments will not be recognized. And those crucial and often pretty awkward moments where you don't know what the outcome would be, that is called opportunity. That brings us to the second half. So now that we understand the importance of a system and opportunity recognition, I'm sure you're wondering, what exactly is the role of luck here? Well, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. It's when you're able to recognize a situation as advantageous and you capitalize on it. Now, sounds fairly straightforward, but I also learned that the professional world takes it to a whole nother level. I once asked Jeff Levy, his son's right there, hi Tanner. I once asked Jeff Levy about how he would define opportunity. He didn't describe it as something glamorous or exciting, but he described it as discomfort. The kind of force that puts you in a corner and leaves you with only two decisions. Either you give in to the pressure, or you make a change big enough to escape it. His force was COVID. The company that he was working for suddenly saw a drastic loss in orders from companies like Hallmark ordering promotional products. In March of 22, his company began having talks of bankruptcy. But where others saw failure, Jeff saw an opportunity. After doing some digging, he realized that his company had access to exclusive personal protective equipment manufacturing companies in China. And eventually, in March of 2022, they began importing personal protective equipment to sell. And from selling cups, t-shirts, mugs, and pens, their company began distributing N95 masks, scrubs, and gloves. March of 2022 began their most successful year to date. What I learned is this: you can be the luckiest man in the world and never realize it if you're unable to understand that even the most mundane things can be opportunities. So luck is a matter of just recognizing what you have in front of you and how you can use it. So now that we understand the importance of luck, how exactly do we use these opportunities? Well, luck and capitalization work hand in hand. You need to be able to understand when to use the skills that you have versus when not to. For example, clutch athletes. They're presented into situations where they're forced to have a moment of highest stakes. But in that moment of highest stakes, they must be able to hone down into a moment of singular focus. By doing this, they're able to demonstrate the fact that even though the moment of highest stakes can be the highest pressure, it's also what puts you in the air. And finally, in Gatsby, the main character wasn't lacking alignment, nor was he lacking In Gatsby, the main character wasn't lacking effort, nor was he lacking ambition. He was lacking alignment with the moments that mattered. Thank you. There we go.